I'm Helen Bradford, 80 years old. I rented my basement apartment to a young man named Jake, who seemed like a perfect tenant. Quiet, polite, always paid rent on time. Then I discovered he was running a massive illegal cryptocurrency scam from my property, stealing millions from victims worldwide. Jake thought an elderly widow wouldn't understand technology or notice what he was doing. He was wrong. I'm a retired computer programmer who helped build Silicon Valley in the 1970s. This is how I infiltrated his operation and brought down his entire criminal network. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell icon so you never miss revenge stories like this. My name is Helen Bradford, and I'm 80 years old. I've lived in my 3-story Victorian house in San Francisco for 55 years. My husband Gerald died 10 years ago, and I've been renting out the basement apartment to help with expenses. 2 years ago, a young man named Jake Morrison responded to my rental ad. He was 28, clean-cut, professionally dressed, and extremely polite. Jake passed the background check and seemed like a dream tenant. For 6 months, everything was perfect. Jake paid rent electronically on time and kept irregular hours, often working late into the night. Just finishing projects for overseas clients, he'd explain. Time zone differences, you know. I noticed Jake had a lot of computer equipment, multiple monitors, expensive laptops, servers with blinking lights. I'm a software developer, Mrs. Bradford. All this equipment is for my work, he assured me. Then strange things started happening. Desperate people began showing up at my house looking for Jake. A woman in her 50s knocked on my door sobbing. Please, I need to talk to Jake Morrison. He has my retirement savings, $340,000. He promised me 200% returns on cryptocurrency investment. Now he won't return my calls. More victims showed up over the next few weeks. An elderly man who'd lost $180,000. A young couple who'd invested their house down payment of $95,000. A widow who'd given Jake her late husband's life insurance money. Jake was running some kind of investment scam from my basement apartment. I confronted Jake about the victims. He seemed completely unfazed. Mrs. Bradford, those people are unfortunately victims of market volatility. I run a legitimate cryptocurrency investment fund. Sometimes investments don't perform as expected. But I didn't believe him. Here's what Jake didn't know. Before I retired in 1995, I was a computer programmer and systems analyst. I worked for IBM in the 1970s, then helped found 2 successful tech startups in Silicon Valley during the 1980s. One afternoon when Jake was out, I went to his apartment to check the water heater. What I found was shocking. 6 computer monitors displaying spreadsheets tracking hundreds of victims, fake investment websites, fraudulent cryptocurrency platforms, and scripts for cold calling potential victims. I took photos of everything. Then I did something Jake would never suspect an 80-year-old woman could do. I installed a keystroke logger on his main computer. Within a week, I had access to everything. Jake's passwords, his communications with co-conspirators, his offshore bank accounts, his victim lists. Jake wasn't running a legitimate investment fund. He was operating a Ponzi scheme that had stolen over $8.7 million from more than 200 victims. The keystroke logger gave me access to Jake's entire operation. I documented everything methodically. Jake's scam worked like this. He'd advertise guaranteed high returns on cryptocurrency investments, typically promising 200 to 300% profits within 6 months. Victims would wire money to offshore accounts Jake controlled. He'd show them fake portfolio statements. When they tried to withdraw funds, Jake would delay with various excuses. I found evidence that Jake had done this before in 3 other states under different names. He'd been investigated twice, but had always moved and changed identities before being caught. I also discovered Jake was planning to disappear within 3 weeks. He'd booked a one-way flight to Thailand. I contacted the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center and provided them with everything I'd gathered. Within 48 hours, an FBI agent named Robert Chen visited my home. Mrs. Bradford, this evidence is extraordinary. How did you obtain all this information? Agent Chen, I installed a keystroke logger and monitored his activity. I worked in tech for 30 years. I may be old, but I'm not obsolete. Agent Chen smiled. This is some of the best digital forensic work I've seen. The FBI set up a sting operation. We created a fake victim, a wealthy, elderly woman played by an undercover FBI agent who contacted Jake about investing $500,000. Jake took the bait immediately. The FBI installed surveillance equipment in my home. Over 2 weeks, Jake went through his entire scam process with the undercover agent. Every step was documented. 3 days before his scheduled flight to Thailand, 20 FBI agents raided my house at 6 a.m. Jake was still asleep when agents burst into his basement apartment. Jake Morrison, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and operating an unlicensed investment scheme. They found everything in Jake's apartment: detailed victim lists, offshore account information, fake identity documents, and $180,000 in cash hidden in a floor safe. Jake looked up and saw me standing in the doorway with Agent Chen. His face went pale. You? You're just an old lady. How did you? Jake, I'm a retired computer programmer and systems analyst. I installed a keystroke logger on your computer and monitored your entire operation for weeks. I built the case that's sending you to federal prison. Jake's trial took place 8 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. The FBI presented surveillance footage of Jake running his scam. They showed financial records proving he'd stolen millions. They brought in 15 victims to testify. The prosecutor asked me to testify as well. Mrs. Bradford, how did you discover Mr. Morrison's criminal activity? I noticed victims coming to my home. I investigated and found evidence of fraud. I used my background in computer programming to monitor his activity. I may be 80 years old, but I spent 30 years in technology. Jake targeted elderly victims because he thought they wouldn't understand technology or fight back. He assumed age equals ignorance. The jury convicted Jake on all charges. The judge sentenced him to 18 years in federal prison and ordered complete restitution to all victims. Mr. Morrison, you are a predator who deliberately targeted elderly and vulnerable people. You showed no remorse. You planned to flee the country and abandon your victims. The FBI recovered $4.2 million from Jake's offshore accounts. Victims received partial restitution, typically recovering 30 to 50% of their losses. I now volunteer with the FBI as a consultant on technology fraud cases involving elderly victims. I teach workshops helping seniors understand cryptocurrency scams. Age doesn't mean helpless, I tell audiences. I'm 80 years old, and I use skills I learned in the 1970s to catch a criminal who thought he was smarter than everyone. Jake is now 5 years into his 18-year sentence. He'll be 46 when released, middle-aged, with no career, a felony record, and a reputation as the scammer who got caught by an elderly woman. I'm 80 years old. I'm a retired programmer who helped build Silicon Valley. And I'm the landlady who proved that experience, intelligence, and determination don't have an expiration date. Jake thought renting from an elderly woman would give him cover for his crimes. He learned that this particular elderly woman had the technical skills and courage to destroy him.